We're going to get started here. Thanks everyone for tuning in today. I'd like to welcome Michael King here. He's out in Seattle. He's with the Communities Project, the director and creator of the Communities Project. So welcome, Michael. Thanks for joining us today. I think, you know, as far as what we're doing here in this platform, we just really want to bring people together is kind of our vision, and asking individuals that are in recovery or advocates of recovery what they're doing right now, and even you know, recommendations of things that they can be doing during this time, just because I know, you know, nationwide and even globally, it's a time where a lot of people, especially in recovery, are being affected by this. So welcome, Michael. It looks like we have a handful of people here, and it looks like Jessica has joined us too. So Jessica is also part of Wisconsin Voices for Recovery, who will also chime in, and she may even have a few questions for Michael today. And if anybody has questions for Michael too, there is an option where you can raise your hand in this if you want to ask Michael a question. We have him for about 30 minutes here, so if you have a question, or you can type it in the chat, and we'll make sure that those get addressed. So yeah, welcome, Michael. I think first, if you could, let's just start it out by giving those that are tuned in just kind of a personal background of who you are, and whatever you'd like to disclose to the audience.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I was just on the phone with a friend this morning. They were asking what was on tap for the day, and I very excitedly told them that I was going to get to see a bunch of my friends in Wisconsin on the phone, because we've done 3 trainings in Wisconsin in the last couple of years. So it's one of my favorite places to go to. And no, I don't say that to everybody, but thanks for having me, everyone. My name's Michael King, and first and foremost, I'm a person in long-term recovery, which for me means I haven't had a drink, a drug, or placed a bet since February 16th of 2013. I'm also the director and creator of the Communities Project. We are a national initiative with the primary mission of saving 1 million lives from substance use related deaths over the next 2 decades, and to do so by investing in people like all of you, investing in the leadership and the community organizing skills of the people who are on the front lines of this issue, especially those who have been personally touched. I've been personally touched. I'm in recovery myself. I come from a long line, a whole family of individuals in recovery. My journey, my professional journey before getting into recovery had me in the political arena. And I had leadership roles in that arena. And eventually, as so many of us who have lived through active addiction have experienced, I ended up engaging in activities that kind of brought me crashing down, brought me to what really amounted to the bottom of my addiction, and ended that career path for me. And I actually ended up having to do some time. I was incarcerated in early recovery. And I actually, it was when I was incarcerated that I really started to kind of think about if there was some way that I could kind of take my biggest personal passion in my life at this point, which had become recovery, and blend it with some of my biggest professional passions, which were advocacy, organizing, and really leadership has evolved as well. So I got out. I ended up going to work for a national group called Facing Addiction that sadly had to close its doors. But while at Facing Addiction, I developed the Communities Project and began flying all over the country, training folks in community organizing. And then recently we've branched out and added leadership into our training repertoire as well. And so we do these trainings on leadership, we do these trainings on organizing, and work with all of the individuals who go through our trainings to build coaching relationships with them, where we can make an ongoing contribution to them and to their work. And the theory being that if we contribute to you, your results will continue to increase. You'll continue kind of more increasing your level of success in putting out the things that you're doing. And if we're doing that community by community, we're going to end up saving more and more lives. So our interest, and my interest, is really in all of you. It's not in any like specific program or initiative. It's in playing a positive role in helping all of you achieve the results that you want to achieve.
Yeah, and I actually remember probably 1.5 years ago, I was involved in one of your trainings there in Waukesha. Very, very good training when you're talking about community and you know, becoming a leader within your community, and what you can do to get the correct people together to really advocate for recovery. So I appreciated that, and I know that you've been back since. So looking at kind of the topics of today, though, too, and diving into more of self-reflection, self-reflection and recovery and leadership. And so I want to ask for you, Michael, what does self-reflection mean when you talk about self-reflection and your own personal journey?
Absolutely. Well, this is a major principle in terms of successful leadership that we train on, is self-reflection. I think it blends very nicely for those of us who are in recovery or have a connection to addiction and who have gone about practicing some kind of a recovery program. And I think it really works because as a principle to work on, because it doesn't really matter what recovery program you happen to be utilizing in your own recovery, self-reflection is going to end up being a component of any one of those particular programs. And so self-reflection really means examining what our contribution is to the results that we are producing, and to do so in a non-judgmental way. So as really, we could say as leaders, but really when you think about it as people, we're always producing results in everything that we do. Every conversation we have, every action we take, every work event we attend, we're always producing some kind of result. And in order to, we have to be willing to take responsibility for that result. But in order to take responsibility, we also have to understand what our contribution was to it. So we have to ask ourselves, what was my contribution? And we have to be willing to do so in a non-judgmental way, because if we are looking at a result that we aren't thrilled about, and then we start judging the actions that we took that led to that result, inevitably, we're not going to really want to take as honest a look at them as we want to. The story I often tell about this from my own experience has to do with something from my personal life, which has to do with my relationship with my 10-year-old daughter. I have two kids, 10 and a 6-year-old. And several years ago, I noticed that when I would drop my kids off at school, I'd walk them in, they were part of a little before school program. I'd go in, they'd throw their backpacks down. My 6-year-old especially, bye dad, run off, go play with the other kids. But my daughter wouldn't do that. My daughter would kind of hold my hand, even at like an age where you're kind of wondering, how long do I get you to hold my hand until it's not cool anymore, right?
Yeah.
So we're walking in, holding my hand kind of tightly almost, and walking to the little sign-in table where I'd sign their name and sign them in for the day, and then kind of look at me and give me a big hug and say, goodbye, Daddy, I love you, right? A big squeezy hug before letting me go for the day. And I didn't see other kids in her age group kind of clinging to their parents in quite that same way. So I started asking myself, okay, so some kind of result has been produced here where my daughter is really clinging to me when I'm dropping her off at school. What might my contribution have been to that result? So I had to go into self-reflective mode and ask that question. And what I realized in looking at it was that when my daughter was 4, I went away and I was in early recovery, and I had to go away to prison. And I didn't see her for several months. There was a period of time where I was absent from her life. And perhaps that had created a result where it was hard for her to say goodbye to me at the beginning of the day. So what can I do then to change that result? And then I could go into, building a plan of action for myself. And it's a personal example, but if I had looked at my contribution in a judgmental way, oh my God, I'm a terrible father, I did this horrible thing that took me away from her. If I bring all that judgment into my practice of self-reflection, I can't really change my behavior because I get too caught up in myself and I get too caught up in my own judgments of it. So the key to successful self-reflection is to be able to look at the contributions we make and do so free of judgment. And when we don't see what our contribution was, or we're not sure about it, asking for feedback. And that's a whole other conversation of building a successful feedback practice.
Are you able to maybe talk a little bit more about how you engage on a daily basis of self-reflection? Maybe some more examples around that.
Sure. Well, so I personally, my recovery pathway for myself has been through a 12-step fellowship. So that's been how I found and have sustained long-term recovery. So as part of the program that I work there, the daily self-reflection, the daily stock on myself is just part of my routine practice anyway. Examining those ideas of, where was I wrong? Where did I hurt somebody? Where did I act selfishly over the course of my day? But again, I think the key to that practice, in order to be successful with it over a sustained period of time, is to be able to look at it non-judgmentally. I'm going to be selfish. I'm going to make mistakes. There's going to be days where I certainly am less than perfect as a human being. I'm home alone with my kids, as so many others are. So there's been more days like that recently, trust me. So I've had to that a lot. But to be able to just on a daily basis kind of engage where did I produce results that were less than favorable as I saw them in my professional life, in my personal life, and doing so on a daily basis and examining what did I contribute to that result? What did I do, to produce the result that I'm not seeing favorably? What can I do tomorrow? What different action can I take to change that result potentially?
How do you think that your own practice of self-reflection is connected to leadership roles that you take on?
Well, leaders are always producing results, whether we're leading an organization, a nonprofit group, whether we're a recovery coach and we want to be effective with the people we're working with, or we're involved in family advocacy. The Communities Project and myself come at this all from the perspective that we don't create a leader, that leadership is a natural expression, that it's innate, that the ability to lead lives within all of us. So when we're engaged in leadership development, it's not the process of creating a leader out of somebody who isn't a leader. It's the process of figuring out what's blocking me from being as effective as I want to be as a leader, which is inherently a self-reflective practice, right? In order to figure out what's blocking me from achieving the results that I want to achieve, I have to examine, what is it that I'm doing? What is my contribution to things? If I can't make my meetings on time, professional, personal, whatever, if I can't make my meetings on time, what's my contribution to that? Maybe I'm not effectively managing a calendar. It could be that simple, right? Maybe I'm not seeing what my contribution is, in which case I need to ask other people what they're seeing. My contribution might be to a situation. So the only way that leaders can ever produce results that are favorable to them or that they want to see is by examining what it is that they're contributing to them, because they're not always, no leader produces a result that they always want 100% of the time. It's happened 0 times in the history of anything. So we always have to be examining what we're contributing. And likewise, I want to emphasize that in leadership, we don't only need to be examining what we're contributing to results that are less than favorable to us. We also need to look at what we are contributing to results that we're thrilled with. What is it that we're doing that's working? Because it's very easy to get hyper critical and only take responsibility for our shortcomings or for the places where we fall up short. But responsibility as a leadership principle is equally about being responsible for our own greatness. And when we produce results that are powerful, that are helping people, we need to be responsible for those too. And sometimes for those of us in recovery, that actually can get uncomfortable. When we train, I always make groups come up with a place in their life, in their professional life, where they're falling a little short, and I make them take responsibility for their contribution. So they have to get self-reflective. Likewise, I ask them, now take responsibility for a place where you're thriving and tell us all what you contributed to that. And inevitably, the latter is 100 times harder for people to do, especially people in recovery who've had this idea that owning their greatness is the opposite of humility, which I just fundamentally reject as an idea.
Yeah, so I guess touching on that a little bit. So, I know that you have, a lot of experience working with individuals and leadership roles within, recovery communities. What's some, I guess, big pieces of advice that you'd give someone if they said, hey, Michael, I want to be a recovery leader in my community. Where do I start? How do I start to build on that platform of being a leader within my community to advocate for recovery?
Well, for starters, I wouldn't give them advice because I don't believe in advice. I think advice is a very disempowering idea. Jessica, I see her smiling in the corner of the screen because she and I have had this conversation many times. And I actually, in the trainings that we do, I encourage leaders to be very, very, very wary of advice. Don't ever give somebody an answer when they can probably figure it out for themselves. A coach, and which is kind of what I do, is guiding people towards a path where they can answer their own issues and asking them the right questions and just being completely present with them and listening. So if somebody came to me and asked me, I want to be a recovery leader, what should I do? The first thing I would probably ask them is, what does that look like to you, right? And then I would go from there and see where the conversation takes us, because I think one of the places where we can fall short in leadership is we try to script out what we're doing. And when we're scripting out what we're doing, we're not actually present with anybody except ourselves, because we have a script in our mind. So we're just present with the script. But if we're present with a script, I'm not present with you. And I'm interested in you. And I want to be interested in you and what you want, because leadership isn't about getting people to do the things I want. Leadership is about empowering people to get the things done that they want to get done. That's leadership. And it's one of the biggest, leaders don't create followers, they create partners. And by engaging in this process, that's really what you're going to be doing, is you're going to be creating partners. And I do the same training for a lot of folks who kind of operate in the world of middle management. And we did a training in Washington, D.C. in early March, and about 100 different people asked variations of the question, how do I get people to do the things that I want them to do?
Yeah.
And I said, well, what I'm hearing with that is, how do I get people to do things that they don't want to do? And I said, I hate to break this to you, but you don't actually ever do that. People do not do things that they don't want to do. And as a leader, what I would encourage you to be is more interested in what they want to do than what you want them to do. Think about that as a recovery coach, for example. If I'm a recovery coach, I need to be listening for what they want from their recovery, not what I hope for them. I hope everyone kind of gets that idea. So connecting that back again to the question, you come to me, you want to be a recovery leader. What does that look like to you? And then inevitably the conversation leads to, so what's stopping you? Like, the only thing stopping you is you. So what commitment are you willing to make? And then let's talk in 2 weeks and let's hear if you actually are committed to that. I'm on a commitment kick right now because I'm working on a blog piece about commitment. So
I'm going to open it up here quick. Does anybody have any questions for Michael before I continue? Looks like you're doing a great job then, Michael. You're answering everyone's questions.
Thank you.
No, so the next thing I just want to dive into, so of course there's been a lot of things that have been affected by what's going on, travel being one of them, you know, and looking at your line of work and the things that you do across the nation, how has that adjusted what you're doing, and even for the organization that you're working for, how has that changed, and kind of the setbacks that you've had to acquire during this time with the Communities Project?
Well, so I would start by just saying that I'd say there aren't any setbacks. That setbacks don't exist. There's just results, right? That's all we're doing is producing results. So how does the situation affect the results that we want to produce? It's a little bit up to us, right? So obviously what we've historically done is we've traveled around the country and done in-person trainings. That's not happening right now.
Yeah.
We're having an internal conversation right now about how to actually proceed for this year. And we might dramatically change what we're doing, at least in 2020. This is certain, but that doesn't mean our commitment to investing in leadership of folks around this field remains absolute. And one of the things that commitment means is that circumstances don't change the extent to which we show up. So that's something that we remain completely committed to investing in leadership. How we show up in terms of the vehicle through which we may do that is very likely to change a little bit this year given these circumstances, but the manner in which we show up and the dedication with which we show up does not waver as a result of any circumstance, and that's because we're actually committed to all of you and to the work.
Awesome. Do you, because I was taking a peek at your website a little bit ago, and I know that you had some things scheduled this summer. I mean, as far as the things that are going on, because we're all kind of up in the air about travel and what we can do, even with Wisconsin Voices, you know, there's events that we've had to cancel and whatnot. So looking ahead here, even within this summer, I mean, are you guys going to be doing any sort of like digital trainings, or that people can sign up for those?
So actually, it is literally a conversation that's taking place as we speak, as to how could we take the format of the trainings we do and move them probably into a format like this, into a Zoom type format. We haven't made a definitive decision or announcement yet on the how and the when, but I will share with all of you that that's the conversation we're literally having as we speak internally right now. As to how to do that. So I would imagine that the answer to that question is going to be yes, that there are going to be opportunities to do exactly that. The when is the question I can't answer just yet, but I'm thinking we'll probably be able to answer it pretty soon.
Perfect. Jessica, I think you had something.
I have to find my unmute button. Michael, it's great to see you. I think the only thing I was just questioning or wondering, I know we had our leadership training here in Madison with you, which thank you again for coming out. And we had such a great turnout. I think we had like 50 some people that came from all around Wisconsin to do leadership training. And I think, the number of people that came then and that were present were leaders that we had here in Wisconsin. And if I think back on the number of people that were there, and I still associate with a lot of those individuals, even now on a daily basis with COVID-19, they're struggling, and they're trying to be great leaders here in Wisconsin, but they're finding roadblocks at every turn because of, maybe it's situations with our ED2 recovery program with Wisconsin Voices because they can't get into the emergency departments, or it's the outreach and providing Narcan, whatever it is. And I think that the morale around our state is low because of just the accessibility of being able to do our jobs, or doing volunteer outreach. And so what bits of, I don't want to say advice because I know you don't like that word, but what bits of information or positive affirmation, I guess maybe, do you have? Because I know you're one of my coaches, and we've been going through this now for the last year. I have monthly calls, and you're wonderful and you're amazing. And every time I get off the phone with you, I feel so inspired and like, okay, I'm going to get back to work. What can you leave us with here in Wisconsin to continue this mission and this work, even at this time when everyone's stress levels are just through the roof?
Well, I appreciate that. And, just so you all know, because I talk to people all over the country, it's certainly not just in Wisconsin. It's everywhere. What I've been kind of saying to folks when we have these conversations is a couple things. Number one is to kind of honor where you are with everything, right? And when we don't get the things that we want, that we're hoping for, disappointment kind of fits the facts, right? So it's not like it's odd or unusual that we're all feeling a little disappointed. That being said, what I would encourage everyone to think about is sort of two things. One, which is, so in this moment of question and uncertainty, what are we all willing to be responsible for? So what is it? What can I contribute in this moment? What can I be, and am I willing to be responsible for in this moment? And there are days going through this where I think it's completely applicable and fair for somebody to say, I'm going to be responsible for myself today, and I'm going to be responsible for taking care of myself and making a contribution towards my own well-being through this really difficult time. So that's the first thing I would say. I would encourage people to do is to use this time as an opportunity to think about what are they really willing to be and interested in being responsible for. The second thing I would just say is to use it as a time to re-examine those commitments, because obviously these are unforeseen circumstances. They're incredibly difficult circumstances. They're circumstances that, how many of us 5 weeks ago had ever uttered the term shelter in place? We're talking about entirely new language that we didn't even know 5 weeks ago. There's trauma that produces in everybody to some extent. So honoring the uniqueness of those circumstances, while at the same time using it as a time to re-engage or recognize the extent of our commitment. So circumstances aren't going to change our commitment. They might change our actions or our behavior. So just to use, to use the Communities Project as an example, the circumstances completely change the manner in which we will probably train folks throughout the course of 2020, frankly, but the commitment remains completely the same. So I think it's an opportunity for folks who are in that situation to think about, again, what am I committed to? And what actions can I take to adjust to these circumstances while not letting the circumstances knock down my commitment? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. Thank you.
The delayed Zoom often.
Right.
You guys know, you know, there's these reaction things on Zoom like that are kind of fun too. Do a little thumbs up. I'm learning all about Zoom right now.
Yeah. Well, we've got a couple minutes left here with Michael. Does anybody else have any questions for him before he goes off to his next venture for the day?
I see we have the amazing Tom Farley with us. Tom, you have to have something to say.
Always asked to perform. Okay. You know, I've been struggling with, not struggling with, but I've been you know, kind of really trying to what I've been working on is redefining community, and I think it's community is being redefined as we speak, and I'm trying to keep you know, in front of it and see what opportunities arise, and I think that's where I'm placing a lot of my, just even figuring out the technology. So for me, in recovery, obviously, you know, the cornerstone is community, and so that's kind of what I've been working on, really kind of trying to put my head around is even when we come out of this, you know, near term or even, you know, somewhat longer term situation that we've been placed in, community, in some respects, is going to change for all of us. Mm-hmm. So, you know, what does that look like, and how does that feed into recovery and to the traditional kind of sense of community? So I don't know if you have any comment on that, but that's kind of where I'm going.
Well, thank you. No, I appreciate that, Tom. Thank you, and I just want to honor your openness to talk about that. And I think you're absolutely right. Something that we talk about a lot, because with the Communities Project, we're often asked, well, what is a community? And I say, well, the definition of a community is just a group of like-minded people. That's all a community. That's all community is defined as. So we all have our own definitions of what our community is, and it's something that we've always tried to be very deliberately vague about, frankly, because we all define it in our own way. I think what's going to be important in this moment is, again, just to honor our own development in this area and to recognize and be present to how we define community is going to change. And once again, I know I sound like a bit of a broken record, but to go back to, does that redefinition of community alter our commitments at all? Or is it just a changing circumstance?
Yeah, and I think too, just to add to that and just to close up for today, we think about, you know, all those, I'm sure you're seeing it out there too, Michael, the impact this has on us in recovery, and the individuals that are really struggling right now. You know, I know I see it here in my local community, and it's like that sense of wanting to give back, and how can I be more productive and giving back to those that are suffering. But I know you said it earlier too, as far as really taking time to examine yourself and what you can do for yourself too during this time. So yeah, it's a lot of good discussion today. I appreciate you coming on, Michael, and of course you, Tom, with your comment as well. So what we're going to do now is we're going to be closing it up, letting Michael get to his day here. I appreciate you jumping in, Michael. If anybody wants to learn more about the Communities Project, I don't know if you can just put out there quick, Michael, where they can find, or which website, and if you have a Facebook page.
Absolutely. I'm actually, just for everybody who's on the chat box, I was just going to put out my personal email as well for everybody. So it should show up here in the chat in just a moment.
Perfect. Well, while he's doing that, we're going to continue to do these every week. Anyone that's tuned in. So next Wednesday, we're actually going to be upping it and bringing on 2 people a week. So we've got a couple of good individuals next week. So just be on the lookout for those on our social media and email chain. So thank you again, Michael. And I hope we talk to you soon.
Yes. Thanks again, folks. Have a great rest of the day. Good luck. Stay safe and healthy.
All right. See ya.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.
Awesome.